Dear Felix Padel, an anthropologist and activist on indigenous issues. Thanks for accepting that interview.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. So our main topic is Abdullah Öcalan, Kurdish leader. Mr. Abdullah Öcalan has been held in isolation in prison last 23 years now. He has been denied visits from his family and lawyers. There are now concerns about Öcalan's health now. Can you comment on this on this treatment first of all?
Thank you very much. As you may know, I was part of a European delegation to Turkey to try to meet him exactly 2 years ago. And today, the 15th of February, it's, I think, exactly 23 years that he's been in jail. So, I think Öcalan is of immense importance in terms of his stature as a thinker and writer. His influence among Kurdish people and far beyond is immense. I don't think there's ever been prison writings more influential, even if you consider Gramsci and people. Secondly, I think because he was one of the founders of the PKK and has really, along with the PKK, and maybe even more than the PKK, he's really tried to be a person standing in the middle to make peace. I think it's immensely important that his voice is freed. And 2 years ago in Istanbul, I met his lawyers and had meetings with his lawyers. So even his lawyers have been subjected to immense pressures. And his isolation, the complete lack of contact with him, it contravenes all the normal human rights. So I think those factors mean it's just immensely important that this Öcalan is brought out of this isolation, really, to play the part in a real peace process with the PKK, with in a much wider sense.
What is the importance of freedom of Kurdish leader Abdullah Öcalan and delisting the PKK from forbidden organizations? This very short, very briefly, please.
Thank you. I think the listing of the PKK as a terrorist organization is an outrage, really. What I often say is, if Nelson Mandela was a terrorist, okay, you can call PKK terrorist. But if Nelson Mandela and the African National Congress is now considered not as terrorist, really, there are no grounds for considering PKK as a terrorist organization. One of the times when this came to the fore, and even for a moment the world media spoke positively about the PKK, was when they took the initiative to save thousands of Yazidi people when ISIS was committing a genocide there, and when the Peshmerga of the northern Iraq forces were not helping. But in general, the PKK are a very enlightened organization. As I've understood it, they observe the Geneva Convention when they capture Turkish soldiers in a way that the Turkish military does not observe, and most forces now do not barely observe the Geneva Convention. There are so many ways in which the PKK should not be considered a terrorist organization. And, we know that in Belgium, they have reversed this, and many other countries do not consider it on that list.
Thank you. What was the target by taking Mr. Öcalan as a hostage, kidnapping him with the February 15th international conspiracy?
I think the reason that he was targeted and the Kurdish issue generally is virtually censored from world media, I think it's because he and the Kurds represent a genuine alternative to the prominent mainstream model of democracy, which is a capitalist construct. And we know that so many decisions in the British Parliament or other world parliaments, the decisions are not as democratic as they appear. There's so much lobbying, so many things behind the scenes. So when you look at Rojava, where Öcalan's system of democratic conventionalism confederalism has been set up. And when you look at how the HDP operates in Turkey, you really see a form of democracy that really represents a new force in the world. And this has come from Öcalan. So I think that's the reason he was arrested. And of course, behind the scenes, pressure was put on the Syrian government to force him to leave in that time in 1999. And that was probably to do with water politics, of the damming of the Tigris and Euphrates and how that has denied water to northern Iraq and northern Syria. And the Syrian and Iraqi governments were forced into positions of accommodating to Turkey in order to get the minimum water. I think this was quite a major reason why he was forced to leave Syria in that time.
This conspiracy has also driven the Kurdish issue to an insoluble state, and many people says. How do you evaluate the isolation on Öcalan? How would you comment the approach of the European Union and the ECHR as well in that case? Isn't it against the human rights? Isn't this human rights violation? And still the EU and its institutions keeping silence against that. So how would you going to comment on this?
Absolutely. I mean, there have been a minority of EU MEPs who have been strong on the Kurdish issue and Öcalan issue. I'm afraid when Britain left the EU because of Brexit, some of those MEP voices were silenced, and maybe the EU has been less prominent since then. But you know, the Brussels Parliament decision shows, on the PKK, shows that there are many voices within the EU that are prepared to support Öcalan and that have been calling for Öcalan's the isolation to end, basically. And I'm afraid that because of NATO, especially, at the moment we see NATO, what is happening in Ukraine and the immense power that NATO is wielding. And of course, we know that most through Turkey. That's because of the NATO influence that wants to accommodate Turkey. There has been silence not just about Öcalan, but also about immense human rights abuses in Afrin and Rojava and in northern Iraq or southern Kurdistan.
Thank you. Just before I got your message, I would like to ask that as well. The European Committee on Torture has criticized the treatment of Abdullah Öcalan by Turkish authorities. Do you think that there is a willingness and ability in Europe and its constitutions to intervene with the Turkish government to address the treatment of Öcalan?
I would have thought so. I'm not somebody who is strong enough on the legal aspect, but to me it seems absolutely clear that the isolation of Öcalan contravenes all normal treatment of prisoners. But you know, nowadays the norms are shifting. Even in Britain here, we have seen the treatment of Julian Assange, which in many ways contravenes normal norms of justice. So Britain or other countries or America turning a blind eye to how Öcalan is treated, it is an outrage, and it's something that just has to change if the world is to come to a more peaceful place.
Lastly, what is your expectation for Mr. Abdullah Öcalan and the message for the Kurdish people on the 23rd anniversary of the international conspiracy?
Thank you. I mean, I salute Öcalan very, very deeply. He is one of the, as a sociologist, as an anthropologist, as a student of human history, I think he is one of the most important thinkers alive today. I think you see the importance of his thought in what is happening in Rojava. And if you think of Rojava in terms of creating a new model of democracy that is really egalitarian between men and women, that is truly multi-ethnic between not just Kurds but other communities too, and is democratic confederalist in terms of questioning the nation state, I think you see the significance of Öcalan's ideas, and really it is a blueprint for a better, more peaceful world order. And one of the parallels that I think here is that if you look at how democracy was formed, demokratia, the ancient Greek word, it was formed in Athens at a time of civil war when there were immense forces outside Athens trying to destroy democracy, and later the Romans destroyed it and other peoples have destroyed it. And so now we have a model of democracy that has come from Athens 2,500 years ago through many contortions. And I think what we're seeing in Rojava could be the birth of a new, much stronger model of democracy. And this is thanks to Öcalan. So I salute the Kurdish people and Öcalan on this anniversary.
Dear Felix Padel, an anthropologist and activist, thanks for joining us. Thank you for your valuable comments today.
Thanks, Erem.
Thank you.